Well, thank you very much, Chair Merkley, and your ranking member, Senator Murkowski. It probably feels like everybody's heard me say this a million times, but it matters, so I'm going to say it again. As we continue our progress to return to regular order, this hearing provides another critical opportunity to look at why it is so important to families that we all work in a timely, bipartisan way to pass our funding bills and make sure we are actually providing the resources necessary to keep people safe. Because safety is about more than just how strong our military is. Families want to know if they have clean air and clean water and that their kids aren't being sickened by pollution. Fishers and our farmers want to know the ecosystem that they rely on, that our economy relies on, is not being harmed by dangerous chemicals. And communities want to know we are making meaningful progress to cut emissions and fight the expansive existential threat that is the climate crisis. The bottom line is that if we want to make sure people in this country are safe, we need to make sure they aren't breathing smog or drinking contaminated water or being exposed to chemicals like PFAS. And by the way, we are learning more and more about just how serious a threat PFAS is to public health. So I hope and expect this committee will work in a bipartisan way to deliver solutions. PFAS, or forever chemicals, aren't just toxic, they are everywhere, to the point where they can even be found in our blood. We need to make sure we are cutting down on pollution, not cutting the funding EPA needs to protect our kids. So I'm glad we have this opportunity today to talk about the critical issues that are threatening our environment, our economy, and our families, and how we can get EPA the resources it needs to keep our country safe, healthy, and competitive. With that, Mr. Administrator, thank you for being here. I'm going to talk about Pacific Puget Sound recovery, and salmon and steelhead recovery remains, as you know, an urgent undertaking in my home state. And EPA's geographic programs and National Estuary Program plays an important role in habitat restoration for those foundational species. The fiscal year 2023 omnibus included robust funding for those programs, and as part of the WRDA, Congress authorized the new Puget Sound Recovery National Program Office in EPA and a Puget Sound Federal Leadership Task Force. I'm really glad to hear that the first task force meeting is actually taking place tomorrow. But can you give us an update on the work that EPA is doing to stand up both those entities and what resources may be necessary to better coordinate restoration and protection of Puget Sound?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for your leadership on the Puget Sound. And we have been a partner for a long period of time. I believe Deputy Assistant Ed McCabe recently visited. Of the fiscal year 2023 increase of $20 million, $17 million of that is immediately going towards the strategic initiative lead cooperative agreements we have for safe shellfish habitat and stormwater projects in Washington. For our tribal partners, Northwest Indian Fisheries Commission is working to finalize the work plans for each of the tribes in the next couple of months for ongoing tribal-led projects. And so we plan to announce a second round of funding in the coming months. We also have an RFA of up to $30 million out to support riparian habitat and climate resilient projects. And so there is a number of resources, a number of strategies put in place to be sure that our partnership is strong on the Puget Sound.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Administrator Reagan, as you know, House Republicans last week voted for very deep across-the-board cuts to discretionary spending over the next 10 years. Can you talk about how those steep cuts would undermine EPA's ability to respond to and address PFAS contamination already in our environment?
Well, thank you for that. And we know that PFAS is such a visceral issue that we're all having to address, and we can't ignore the science. We have put in place a PFAS strategic roadmap. We have about $10 billion from bill to address PFAS, but we all know that that's not enough. Many of our small rural communities are struggling with this issue, and so we are working very strategically with the resources we have on R&D, partnering with our federal family to determine the safe levels and how to regulate this forever chemical. And as we do such, we're also leveraging billions of dollars from the bipartisan infrastructure law to ensure that disadvantaged communities and rural water systems have access to those resources so that they can keep pace with these regulations. Listen, it's our job to keep people safe, and we recognize that there are technologies on the market and they're expensive, And so we're trying to work on a path where we can bridge that gap between safety and technology and detection. And that's what we're doing on behalf of the American people.
And how would the House budget that they passed affect that?
It would significantly set us back. House budget cuts on PFAS, on lead, on chemical detection in this country would significantly set us back. And as I said in my opening statement, we're moving forward. We need to continue to move forward because there's so much more work that needs to be done. We shouldn't be moving backwards, especially on TSCA, PFAS, lead, and getting tools out there as herbicides and pesticides for our farming community.
Okay, thank you. And I was really pleased to see the recent $400 million notice of funding opportunity for the Clean School Bus Grant Program that we established in the bipartisan infrastructure law. And I was glad that you were actually out in Washington State last October to highlight this and the difference it's going to make. This is a program that is so great. It's really going to improve the health of kids and communities across the country and cut costs for our schools and reduce emissions and support good-paying jobs. So I was pleased to see that. I wanted to ask you, during the application phase and in the review process, how is EPA going to work to make sure that our underserved communities, including those on the prioritized school district list, are competitive in this program?
We've been doing that from day one. Of the billions of dollars that have hit the streets so far, 99% of the grants have gone to rural, disadvantaged, or low-income communities. And I have to say, some of my best visits around electric yellow school buses have been in some of our rural communities, rural places like Alma, Kansas, where they're using these school buses not only to transport children to and from school, but those batteries are serving as backup capacity for the rural electric cooperatives. So these communities are being very strategic in how we use this technology beyond the yellow school buses, and it's really exciting to see our rural communities do that.
That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.